because Britain is a very important partner to the US. In trading terms, America is Britain's strongest trading partner. Also, in foreign policy, Britain is a big and staunch supporter and has been for generations.
Okay, let me just stop you there and ask you this question for the sake of our viewers. Cameron's election, we'll call it an election, I know it's maybe described in different terms, but the fact that Cameron's going to be the new British Prime Minister, what does that mean to Americans? Is he more apt to favor our policies or less apt to favor our policies? In comparison, of course, to Mr. Clegg, who was a Liberal, and Mr. Brown, who was with Labour.
Yeah, I think David Cameron will be foursquare behind the so-called special relationship with the United States. And of course, you've got to remember that British troops are currently serving alongside American troops in Afghanistan. So there has to be a strong working relationship between Mr. Cameron and President Obama. I mean, I very much doubt it will have the strength of the relationship between, say, Blair and Bush or Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, but only time will tell. But there has to be a strong working relationship. And of course, we'll see in the fullness of time just how strong that relationship is. Now, you'll expect the Prime Minister's car, it will be, I would say, in about 10 seconds, it will pull into Downing Street. He's just pulling in front of Her Majesty's Treasury there. Yeah, he's about 10
And he's literally,
away.
and by the way, and I certainly don't mean to interrupt, but this is the way you and I have been talking all day long about this, because I'm really into this story. What's interesting about this is he's going to his brand new residence. This is not just about a guy getting a new job. This is about a guy getting a new gig, a new place to live.
Yeah, and if you think about the old guy, he loses his job and he loses his house in the space of about 20 minutes. Now, that's pretty rough. And that's what happened to Gordon Brown and his country grace and favour residence at Chequers. But, you'll see the Prime Minister's car. It'll turn left in just a second. That is the entrance to Downing Street. It'll be swinging in there.
And look
at
all the people on the streets. Now, these are people that have been gathering there all day to watch this process, not knowing how or when it would unfold. Now, what's interesting is that in London, we heard people cursing him and his delegation when they came out. Now, obviously, that's not representative of an entire country, and one group does not an entire country's politics make. But why are we seeing in London so many people screaming at this guy? We just saw a lady right there doing thumbs down.
Rick. Because you're allowed to.
Okay.
You're allowed to. Now,
simple enough.
Simple enough. You're allowed to. You can speak your mind. And there's David Cameron getting out of the car with Samantha Cameron, his wife, who's pregnant, incidentally.
I think we got some sound. Let's listen.
Okay, let's listen.
Let's do it. Her name is Samantha, you said?
Samantha Cameron, yeah.
Samantha. Rather attractive woman.
Yes.
And so is he. He's a good-looking guy. He's young, right?
Each and educated at Oxford University.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form, and I have accepted. Before I talk about that new government, let me say something about the one that has just passed. Compared with a decade ago, this country is more open at home and more compassionate abroad, and that is something we should all be grateful for. And on behalf of the whole country, I'd like to pay tribute to the outgoing Prime Minister for his long record of dedicated public service. In terms of the future, our country has a hung parliament where no party has an overall majority, and we have some deep and pressing problems. A huge deficit, deep social problems, and a political system in need of reform. For those reasons, I aim to form a proper and full coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. I believe that is the right way to provide this country with the strong, the stable, the good and decent government that I think we need so badly. Nick Clegg and I are both political leaders who want to put aside party differences and work hard for the common good and for the national interest. I believe that is the best way to get the strong government that we need, decisive government that we need today. I came into politics because I love this country. I think its best days still lie ahead, and I believe deeply in public service. And I think the service our country needs right now is to face up to our really big challenges, to confront our problems, to take difficult decisions, to lead people through those difficult decisions so that together we can reach better times ahead. One of the tasks that we clearly have is to rebuild trust in our political system. Yes, that's about cleaning up expenses. Yes, that's about reforming Parliament. And yes, it's about making sure people are in control and that the politicians are always their servants and never their masters. But I believe it's also something else. It's about being honest about what government can achieve. Real change is not what government can do on its own. Real change is when everyone pulls together, comes together, works together, when we all exercise our responsibilities to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to others. And I want to help try and build a more responsible society here in Britain. One where we don't just ask, what are my entitlements, but what are my responsibilities? One we don't ask what am I just owed, but more, what can I give? And a guide for that society that those who can should, and those who can't, we will always help. I want to make sure that my government always looks after the elderly, the frail, the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us on some things that we have ahead. Above all, it will be a government that is built on some clear values. Values of freedom, values of fairness, and values of responsibility. I want us to build an economy that rewards work. I want us to build a society with stronger families and stronger communities. And I want a political system that people can trust and look up to once again. This is going to be hard and difficult work. A coalition will throw up all sorts of challenges, but I believe together we can provide that strong and stable government that our country needs, based on those values, rebuilding family, rebuilding community, above all, rebuilding responsibility in our country. Those are the things I care about. Those are the things that this government will now start work on doing. Thank you very much.
And there you have David Cameron, and he's walking in. Is this the first time he walks into this residence, or has he met before with either Tony Blair or...
Oh, he's been in there before. He used to be an advisor to the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Finance Minister, Norman Lamont, so he's been in there many times, but he's never walked in there as Prime Minister. And there he is, Mr. and Mrs. Cameron going inside their new home. And the question is, how long will it be their new home? Because this is a coalition of very, very unlikely bedfellows.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, you know, for Gordon Brown, it was probably one of the shortest tenures in British history, was it not?
Well, it was
How long was he there?
He was there 2.5 years.
That's not a lot.
No, I mean, it's kind of the time that James Callaghan was there in the 1970s, but no, it's not a long time when you think Margaret Thatcher was there for 11.5 years and Tony Blair was there for over 10 years. But this is a very, very difficult job he's got on his hands here. I mean, this is a coalition of a bunch of people who are not natural bedfellows, so some people refer to it as a poison chalice, because these guys have got to make some very unpopular decisions now.
So here's what we have left. We've seen the former Prime Minister resign. We've seen the Queen accept that. We've seen the new Prime Minister come in. We've seen the Queen accept his assignment. We've now seen him speak before the people there in front of 10 Downing Street. We've seen him enter the residence. There's one part of the story that still remains to be told, and that is, what will Nick Clegg, the guy who came in third, we should say, the Liberal, what will he be? Will we hear soon from the Cabinet Office, or perhaps from Cameron himself, that he's going to assign him, and this would be big news, would it not, if he's going to give him the assistant prime minister gig, which is what you would call the deputy prime minister?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is in the gift of the Prime Minister. The cabinet positions are in the gift of the Prime Minister, but the deal has got to involve the Liberals getting something, and it could be quite a lot. So there's talk about maybe Mr. Clegg being the Deputy Prime Minister, but he'll want some responsibilities with that job. He won't want to be a ceremonial Deputy Prime Minister.
Like a ceremonial Vice President in this country? Right.
Exactly. So he'll want some...
So why not make him Home Secretary?
He may well make him Home Secretary, and that's a very powerful position. That's the Interior Minister. You're responsible for security. And
that's a big gig.
Police. It's a very, very big responsibility in the UK, yeah, especially because of the terrorist threat and so on. But I think Another important appointment will be the Foreign Secretary. Who will be the Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary? Why is that important? Because, of course, America's role on the international stage is vital, and the link between the US and Britain is very important. So there's got to be a dynamic, if you like, between the new Foreign Secretary and, say, Hillary Clinton. Okay. But there's got to be a dynamic, Rick, between the new Prime Minister and President Obama.
Before we put this to bed, then, unless, of course, they come out and make this announcement that we're waiting for, the next thing that will happen with Cameron is he'll come here to the White House, as all prime ministers have done in the past. He will sit down and meet with the President of the United States.
I think whether he comes to the White House...
That will be sooner than later, right?
It will, yeah, or whether he meets the President at one of these international summits, you know, that are always called. I don't know where that will be, I don't know when it will be, but traditionally the British Prime Minister likes to see the US President as quickly as possible, because the British do believe in the importance of the special relationship, and given that so many British troops are fighting alongside US troops in Afghanistan, it's critical that Obama and Cameron are singing from the same hymn sheet there.
That is 10 Downing Street?
That's 10 Downing Street. Next door, the white building at the end there, that's number 11 Downing Street, where the Finance Minister
And the other one is 12 Downing Street on
That's
the
where the Chief
far
Whip is.
part,
Yeah, the
right.
Chief Whip's down at number 12.
Wow.
But